Hello, dear friend. Welcome to Softlytosleep, where we listen, relax, and gently drift into slumber. My name is Tony Dong, and it is truly an honor to be your guide tonight. Thank you so much for listening. This evening, I'll be your storyteller, and together we'll step back in time to experience a journey like no other. Imagine the rhythm of a train rolling steadily along the tracks, the gentle sway of its carriages, and the promise of adventure waiting just beyond the station platform. This is not just any train. It is the most luxurious and iconic of them all. Tonight, we'll board the legendary midnight train to the east, a voyage that once carried royalty, diplomats, artists, and dreamers across the great cities of Europe. Asterisk, before we step onto the platform, let's prepare ourselves for this story the same way we would before sleep. Make yourself comfortable wherever you may be. Settle into a position where your body feels at ease. With each breath in and out, imagine yourself releasing any tension from the day. The weight of worries slowly drifts away. You are free now to simply listen and follow along as we embark on a journey into comfort, beauty, and wonder. Picture yourself in bed, or perhaps reclining in a cozy armchair, while outside your window, the night settles quietly across the land. A cool breeze brushes against the glass, and you feel the calmness that comes only when the world slows down. The story you are about to hear will guide you into stillness, like a gentle lullaby of history and imagination. Now, with your mind at ease, let us step back through the corridors of time. The year is 1923. Europe is alive with movement and change. Its cities buzzing with energy in the years after the Great War. On this particular evening, we find ourselves in Paris at one of the grand stations where dreams begin. The air is cool. The lamps glow softly, and the station is filled with a low hum of anticipation. Ahead of you stretches the platform, shrouded slightly by drifting clouds of steam from the waiting engine. And there, gleaming under the lights, is the train itself, a long, elegant line of carriages painted in deep midnight blue. Along its polished sides runs a stripe of gold, shining with regal splendor. Above the doors are ornate crests in the shape of mythic beasts, their wings spread wide in silent guardianship of the travelers within. Even from a distance, the train seems alive, humming with the promise of discovery. Around you, passengers gather in small clusters, speaking softly in French, German, and English. Their voices mingle with the echo of footsteps on the stone platform. Fashionable men in tailored suits carry slim walking canes and wear hats tipped low, while women move gracefully in stylish coats. Skirts brushing just above the ankle. There, hair cut into short bobs, crowned with elegant hats. Pearls glimmer at the throats of some, while others wear feathered bands or sequined headpieces that catch the light. It is the height of the roaring 20s, and every traveler looks ready to step into a grand evening of glamour. You clutch your ticket-thick card, embossed with golden lettering, and feel the weight of anticipation settle warmly in your chest. You are about to board not merely a train, but a symbol of romance and adventure. A uniformed steward steps forward, his navy blue jacket adorned with rows of brass buttons. He greets each passenger with a polite bow and a warm smile. His cap gleams beneath the lights, and when it is your turn, his gloved hand directs you to the polished brass handle of the door. And as you step forward, you feel the history of countless journeys pressing gently at your shoulders. You climb aboard, leaving behind the echoing station and stepping into another world entirely. The moment your shoes touch the plush burgundy carpet of the corridor, you know you've entered a palace on wheels. The walls gleam with polished mahogany, each panel smooth to the touch and reflecting the soft glow of the lamps. Inlaid designs of flowers and vines wind across the wood, carved with exquisite detail. The scent of polished wood mingles with faint traces of lavender and linen, creating an atmosphere both refined and comforting. A second steward leads you to your cabin, walking gracefully along the corridor as the train gently vibrates beneath your feet. The air is warm, the light golden, and each step seems to carry you further away from the world outside. When he opens the door, you catch your first glimpse of your private retreat. The cabin is intimate yet lavish, designed with both comfort and beauty in mind. Along the wall stands a plush olive green sofa, its cushions embroidered with bronze patterns of leaves that shimmer in the lamplight. Above the sofa, a shelf of polished bronze lattice holds room for your luggage. Mahogany table gleams, its surface reflecting the glow of a lamp topped with a soft, coral-colored shade. A vase rests upon it, slender and delicate, holding a few bright blooms that bring life and color into the room. The steward points out a small brass button near the window, your call bell for any service you may require. A hidden panel reveals a tiny wash basin with shining taps of both hot and cold water. And, with a knowing smile, he explains that the sofa will later be transformed into a soft bed, ready for you when you return from dinner. With a polite bow, he leaves you to explore your new surroundings. You set your suitcase upon the shelf and run your hand across the smooth wooden walls. The cabin feels at once luxurious and secure, like a secret retreat set apart from the noise of the world. You sink into the sofa and glance out the window. Beyond the glass, the station still bustles with movement, passengers calling to each other, porters wheeling luggage, lamps glowing against the rising steam. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, the train shudders to life. A low hum rises from the engine far ahead, and the faint hiss of steam escapes into the night. With a rhythmic clatter, the wheels begin to turn, pulling the long line of carriages forward. Oh no. The platform begins to slip away, and the grand station fades into the distance. You are moving now, leaving Paris behind and journeying into the night. The gentle rocking of the train cradles you as the landscape shifts beyond the window. Street lamps flicker past, then rows of houses, then fields, bathed in silver moonlight. The sky above glows faintly, scattered with stars. Inside your cabin, everything feels hushed and safe. The lamp on your table casts a golden circle of light, and the marigolds in the vase seem to glow softly against the glass. The rhythm of the wheels forms a steady heartbeat beneath you, guiding your thoughts into calmness. As the train gathers speed, you let your mind wander. You imagine the destinations that lie ahead, the winding streets of Vienna, the romantic canals of Venice, the domes and minarets of Istanbul. Each stop promises new wonders, but for now, the journey itself is enough. This rolling palace is your world, and it is perfect in its beauty and comfort. With a deep breath, you lean back into the sofa, close your eyes, and allow yourself to be carried away by the soothing rhythm of the train. The adventure has just begun. The gentle rocking of the train is already a comfort, a rhythm that makes the outside world seem very far away. As Paris fades behind you, the countryside opens up in shades of silver and shadow. The moonlight spills across fields and hedgerows, and the faint outline of trees drifts past your window. Inside your cabin, warmth and golden light create a little haven that belongs entirely to you. A few minutes later, there's a soft knock at the door. When you open it, you see a smiling attendant with a trolley. He sets down a cup of warm tea, complete with milk and sugar, and assures you that the dining carriage will begin service soon. You thank him, close the door, and settle back into your sofa. The aroma of the tea mingles with the faint floral scent of the marigolds by the window. Each sip warms you, soothing your throat and calming your mind. The simple act of drinking tea feels like a ritual, a pause between the world you've left behind and the one you're gliding toward. Once you've finished, you place the delicate china cup back on the table and loosen your jacket. It feels good to relax into the softness of the cushions. Your suitcase sits neatly on the bronze lattice above, but you decide to bring it down and open it for the book you tucked inside. It's a mystery, novelan, old favorite, the kind of story you've read more than once, familiar, comforting, and perfectly suited to the mood of a long train journey. You slide off your shoes, prop a cushion against the wall, and stretch your legs across the sofa. With the rhythm of the train beneath you and the soft lamplight glowing around you, the world of your book unfolds. The story feels richer in this setting, as if it was written just for this moment. When fiction and reality blur inside a moving carriage, every now and then your eyes drift away from the page to the window. Outside, the night seems endless. Occasionally, a cluster of lights appears, a small village, perhaps, or a farmhouse in the distance, but soon it fades, swallowed by the vast countryside. You imagine the lives being lived out there, far from the glamour of this train, and then return to your novel with a smile. After a while, though, the scent of food begins to drift through the carriage. It's subtle at first, something savory, rich and warm, manned, then unmistakable. Your stomach rumbles in response, and you glance at your watch. It is nearly time for dinner. You close your book, place it gently on the polished table, and rise to prepare yourself. From your suitcase, you take a neatly folded outfit, a dinner suit, dark and pressed with a crisp shirt and tie. Changing clothes feels like part of the ritual of this journey. When you look in the mirror above the sink, you see yourself reflected in soft lamplight, ready to join the parade of elegantly dressed passengers. Once dressed, you step into the corridor. The carpet here is a deep shade of burgundy, muted under the golden glow of overhead lamps. The train sways gently as you walk, your footsteps cushioned by the thick pile beneath you. The corridor stretches on and on, lined with doors to private cabins, each holding its own story. Occasionally, you pass another passenger. A nod here, a quiet greeting there. Some smile politely, others walk with an air of mystery, eyes hidden beneath the brims of their hats. You wonder who they are, where they're headed, and what secrets they might carry with them. This is part of the magic of the train. Each person is a character in an unfolding story, their lives brushing against yours for just a brief journey. It takes a little time to reach the dining carriage, but the stroll is pleasant. The faint rocking of the train feels soothing, and the aromas of dinner grow stronger with each step. By the time you arrive, you are more than ready to sit down and enjoy the experience. The dining carriage is a masterpiece of elegance. Lamps cast pools of golden light across the tables, each set with fine silverware and gleaming crystal. The chairs are upholstered in rich floral patterns, soft and inviting. Polished wood panels line the walls, inlaid with crystal designs that catch the light like stars. A waiter in a white uniform greets you warmly and guides you to a table by the window. You sink into the chair, letting the velvety fabric embrace you. A flute of champagne is poured, bubbles rising like tiny jewels, while a second glass of cool water glimmers with ice and lemon. You lift the menu. An evening of gourmet courses awaits. Soon, the first dish arrives. A delicate consomme served, steaming, in a china bowl edged with gold. You take your spoon and savor the taste, the warmth spreading through you like a gentle embrace. A soft bread roll, golden and fresh, sits on a small plate, ready to be enjoyed with thick, creamy butter. The atmosphere in the dining carriage is lively yet refined. Gentle conversation hums around you, punctuated by the occasional clink of silver against china. Passengers glance at one another with curiosity, some chatting cheerfully, others keeping to themselves. A few seem almost theatrical in their elegance. Women in glittering gowns, men in perfectly tailored tuxedos. As you finish your soup, a waiter clears the table and replaces it with the next course. Tender fish served with a light champagne sauce, accompanied by potatoes crisped to perfection and sprinkled with parsley. The presentation is almost too beautiful to disturb, yet the first bite confirms it is every bit as delicious as it looks. You take your time, pausing now and then to admire the decor. Etched crystal panels on the walls shimmer with designs of roses and leaves. They seem to echo the flowers placed in slim silver vases on each table. The rose at yours stands tall, its petals unfolding gently, releasing a faint, sweet fragrance that mingles with the aroma of fine cuisine. From the corner of your eye, you notice two women entering the carriage. One wears a gown of deep velvet, her neck adorned with sparkling emeralds that catch the light like fireflies. Her companion is dressed more simply in black, yet there is an elegance in her quiet presence. They take their seat nearby, their conversation soft but cheerful, and you wonder about their story. Perhaps they are aristocrats traveling incognito. Perhaps they are close friends enjoying an adventure. Perhaps, like so many others on this train, they are both more and less than they seem. The thought makes you smile as you return to your meal. The third course arrives. Pork cutlets, tenderly cooked, served with a sauce of white wine and mustard, accompanied by fresh vegetables. The waiter places a candle on your table, its flame flickering gently in the movement of the train. Outside, the sky has darkened, and the windows reflect only the warm glow of the carriage. The flicker of the candle dances against the glass, creating the illusion of firelight drifting through the night. By the time dessert is served up, light apricot tart with cream, the dining carriage has settled into a comfortable rhythm. Glasses clink softly, spoons stir gently, and laughter rises now and then from one of the tables. You savor the sweetness of the tart, its fruitiness perfectly balanced by the smooth cream. A final cup of coffee arrives, rich and dark, softened with cream stirred into a swirl of pale clouds. You lean back in your chair, sipping slowly, letting contentment spread through you. Around you, the carriage glows with quiet luxury. It feels less like a restaurant and more like a dream, one that moves steadily across the dark countryside. At a nearby table, a man writes in a notebook between sips of his coffee. His brow furrows slightly as he pauses to think, then relaxes as he puts pen to paper once more. Is he a poet, recording verses inspired by the journey? A journalist capturing details for a story? Or perhaps something more mysterious, a spy jotting coded notes only he could understand? The possibilities swirl like smoke in the candlelight dot. At last, it is time to return to your cabin. You rise, thank the waiter, and make your way back. Along the corridor, the train feels quieter now. Many passengers already retired for the night. The sound of the wheels is steady, hypnotic. Each step takes you further into the calm of evening. When you open the door to your cabin, you find it transformed. The sofa has been folded down into a bed covered in crisp white sheets that smell faintly of fresh linen. A soft blanket waits at the foot, ready to wrap you in warmth. The little lamp still glows on the table, casting a golden halo over the room. You change into your nightclothes, hang your suit neatly, and slip beneath the sheets. The bed is wonderfully comfortable, the fabric cool against your skin. For a moment, you reach toward your book, considering one more chapter before sleep. But then you hear it's the gentle patter of rain against the roof and window. It blends with the rhythm of the wheels, a soft percussion that turns the night into a lullaby. The sound is soothing, like nature itself singing you into dreams. You close your eyes, breathing deeply, catching the faint scent of flowers and linen. The train rocks you gently, steadily, as the countryside rushes unseen through the dark. The warmth of the cabin, the rhythm of the rails, and the patter of rain wrap around you, carrying you into the deepest, most peaceful sleep. The train carried on through the night, its rhythm as steady as a heartbeat. Outside, the world had quieted into stillness, the moon casting long silver shadows across fields and forests that seemed to stretch endlessly. Inside, however, the carriages glowed with a soft golden light, each compartment a little sanctuary of warmth against the dark. After the rich feast in the dining car, many passengers had returned to their cabins, some already preparing for sleep, while others lingered over a final glass of brandy. Yet the heart of the train still pulsed with quiet life. For not everyone was ready to surrender to slumber. You found yourself wandering once more into the lounge car. The air here was alive with the low murmur of voices, the occasional clink of a glass, and the soft strains of a piano being played at the far end. A gentleman in a crisp tuxedo, his hair gleaming silver under the lamplight, sat at the keys with easy grace, coaxing out a tune that was both wistful and hopeful all at once. The melody floated through the room like smoke, winding its way into every corner. The lounge itself was a marvel of elegance. Deep armchairs in rich emerald and sapphire hues lined the space, their curved backs inviting weary travelers to sink in and forget the weight of the world. Heavy curtains framed the windows, now pulled halfway closed, though glimpses of the starlit countryside still shone through. On small tables between the chairs, crystal glasses caught the light, sparkling like tiny beacons in the dimness. It was here that conversations blossomed, delicate as flowers unfolding in the moonlight. Strangers who, mere hours ago, had known nothing of one another, now leaned close, their voices low, trading stories, philosophies, and laughter. The train had a way of breaking down walls, of drawing people together in ways that ordinary life seldom allowed. At one table sat a pair of scholars, their heads bent over a worn, leather-bound book. They debated in hushed tones about history, tracing the rise and fall of empires, as though the answers might be hidden between the turning pages. Nearby, a group of young artists leaned in eagerly, sketching quick impressions of their fellow travelers by the flicker of candlelight, their laughter bubbling up every time one of them exaggerated a feature. But it was at another table, near the wide brass-rimmed windows, that your attention lingered. A woman with hair the color of chestnuts and eyes bright as the sea sat alone, a half-finished glass of champagne before her. She wore a dress of dark velvet, its folds catching the lamplight in waves of shadow and shimmer. Something about her presence drew you in, not in a way that shouted for attention, but in the quiet, magnetic way of someone who carried secrets. She glanced up and caught your eye. With a graceful tilt of her head, she gestured to the empty seat across from her, traveling alone. She asked when you joined her, her voice low and melodic, touched with an accent you couldn't quite place. You nodded, explaining that this journey was one you had long dreamed of. Chance to see the heart of Europe, to witness its cities and landscapes in all their richness. And yet, she replied with a smile, already the journey itself is becoming the destination. Her words lingered in the air between you. Like the faint perfume, she wore something floral, elusive. She introduced herself as Alina. She spoke of her love for the unknown, for the way the rails carried her away from the familiar and into the embrace of possibility. Trains are like threads, she said softly, her gaze turning to the window where moonlight rushed past. They weave people's lives together, even if only for a night or two. We may part ways at some station, never to meet again, but for these hours, our lives share the same rhythm. You felt yourself leaning into her words, drawn by their poetry. The two of you spoke of many cities you had visited, books that had changed the way you thought, songs that clung to your memory like fragments of a dream. Time slipped away unnoticed, the hours dissolving into the soft cadence of voices and the lull of the train around you. The lounge slowly thinned as passengers drifted back to their cabins. The piano player packed away his music with a tired but contented smile, and the last of the stewards quietly cleared away the empty glasses. Still, you and Alina lingered, savoring the rare intimacy of the night. At one point, she grew quiet, gazing out into the darkness, as though searching for something. Do you ever wonder, she asked suddenly, what it means to belong? Whether it is a place, a person, or simply a moment in time. You thought carefully before answering. Perhaps belonging wasn't fixed, wasn't about a destination at all, but about the moments that gave us peace, about the journeys that reminded us of who we were. Her smile in response was soft, wistful, and perhaps a little sad. Yes, she said, perhaps the train is enough for now. The words carried a weight that hung gently in the air. And though you wanted to ask more, to know the story hidden behind her eyes, you sensed that this was not the moment. Some truths, after all, reveal themselves only in their own time. Eventually, fatigue tugged at your limbs. The warmth of the lounge, the steady rhythm of the train, and the hour itself conspired to draw you toward sleep. Alina seemed to sense it too. Rising gracefully, she placed her glass on the table and offered you a parting nod. Until tomorrow, she said, and then she was gone. Her figure slipping quietly down the corridor until the shadows swallowed her completely. You lingered for a moment, watching the space where she had been, before finally standing and making your way back to your cabin. The corridor was hushed, the lamps dimmed, and the only sound was the occasional creak of the train as it sped through the night. When you entered your cabin, you found it transformed. The sofa had been folded into a wide bed, layered with crisp linens, a thick quilt, and plump pillows that invited you to sink into their embrace. On the table by the window sat a small tray with a silver carafe of water and a delicate porcelain cup, a thoughtful touch from the steward. You undressed slowly, slipping beneath the quilt as the train rocked gently beneath you. Through the window, the stars wheeled silently across the heavens, and the moon's light spilled over the passing fields like a dream-made silver dot as you lay there, drowsiness settling over you like a warm blanket. You thought again of Elena's words. The journey itself is becoming the destination. With those thoughts circling softly in your mind, you drifted into sleep, cradled by the steady heartbeat of the rails. The Orient Express, rather. This midnight palace of steel and velvet carried on toward tomorrow. The train moved steadily through the night, its wheels singing a lullaby that lulled even the most restless of souls into sleep. But as dawn crept across the sky, brushing the horizon with soft strokes of rose and gold, the world outside began to stir once more. A faint light slipped through the curtains of your cabin, coaxing you from slumber. The quilt was warm, the pillows still cradling your head, yet curiosity tugged you awake. You rose, wrapping yourself in the robe left neatly at the foot of the bed, and crossed to the window. What greeted you stole your breath. The Orient Express was winding its way through the foothills of the Alps, and the landscape outside looked as though it had been painted by some divine hand. Rolling meadows, heavy with dew, stretched into the distance, their green surfaces sparkling in the first rays of sunlight. Beyond them, jagged peaks rose, majestic and snow-capped, their summits glowing pink in the early light. The train traced a delicate path along the curves of rivers and the edges of forests, as though it too was awed by the grandeur of its surroundings. The silence of dawn was profound. Even the usual rhythm of the train seemed subdued, as though it had softened its voice so as not to disturb the beauty outside. You opened the window slightly, and a crisp rush of mountain air filled the cabin cool, invigorating, tinged with the faint scent of pine. Moments later came a gentle knock at the door. When you opened it, a steward stood waiting with a tray. On it sat a silver pot of coffee, a porcelain cup, and a basket of warm pastries wrapped in linen. "Good morning, he said, softly, careful not to intrude on the quiet magic of the hour. Breakfast service will be in the dining car shortly, but I thought you might enjoy something while you watch the sunrise. You thanked him, placing the tray on the small table by the window. As the train wound through the Alpine valleys, you sipped your coffee, rich and aromatic, and savored a buttery croissant that melted delicately on your tongue. It was a simple meal, yet in this setting, it felt transcendent, as though each flavor had been sharpened by the crispness of the morning air. Soon, the train entered a series of tunnels, plunging briefly into darkness before bursting back into light. Each emergence offered a new view, sometimes a sleepy village nestled at the foot of a mountain, its rooftops dusted with frost. Sometimes a rushing river, white with rapids tumbling through a rocky gorge. Sometimes nothing but vast stretches of wilderness, untouched and eternal, when at last you dressed and made your way to the dining car. You found it buzzing with a gentle energy. Passengers who had been strangers only yesterday now greeted one another with nods and smiles, united by the shared wonder of the journey. The tables gleamed with fresh linens, and sunlight streamed in through the wide windows, painting everything in warmth. You spotted Alina, seated near the window, a plate of fruit before her, a leather notebook open beside her cup of tea. She glanced up as you entered, her expression softening into a smile that felt like a continuation of last night's conversation. With a small wave, she invited you to join her. "Did you sleep well?" she asked, closing the notebook as you sat. You admitted that you had, though the beauty of the morning had pulled you from your dreams sooner than you expected. She laughed lightly, the sound like bells ringing faintly in the air. The mountains have a way of demanding attention. Even in silence, they speak louder than most voices. Over breakfast, the two of you continued your exchange from the night before. Alina spoke of places she longed to visit: Vienna, with its music and coffee houses; Venice, with its labyrinth of canals; Istanbul, where East met West in a vibrant tapestry of culture. She described them not as destinations to be checked from a list, but as living poems, each with its own rhythm and voice. As you listened, you realized how her perspective transformed the journey. It wasn't about the distance covered, but the richness found along the way, fleeting conversations, the shifting landscapes, the taste of a croissant while watching the sun climb above the Alps. When breakfast concluded, the stewards cleared the tables and many passengers returned to their cabins. Elena, however, suggested exploring the observation car together. The two of you walked through the corridors, the gentle sway of the train guiding your steps. At last, you reached the glass-domed carriage, where wide windows curved up into the ceiling, offering an unobstructed view of the mountains. Plush seats lined the sides, but most travelers chose to stand by the glass, unable to resist the pull of the scenery. And what scenery it was! The train now climbed higher, tracing narrow ledges carved into the rock, winding along tracks that seemed to hang in the air itself. Below, valleys opened wide, dotted with chalets and herds of grazing cattle, their bells ringing faintly in the distance. Above, eagles circled lazily against the clear blue sky, their wings catching the sunlight as they soared. Every bend revealed a new vista more breathtaking than the last. There was a collective hush in the car, as though the passengers had silently agreed to let nature's voice fill the space. Alina leaned close, her breath fogging the glass slightly, her eyes wide. With wonder, "It feels almost unreal," she whispered, "as though we've stepped into a dream." You nodded, unable to find words sufficient for the majesty before you. For hours, the train wound through the mountains, crossing bridges that spanned dizzying gorges, diving into tunnels that pierced the heart of the peaks, and gliding past lakes so still they reflected the sky with perfect clarity. Time seemed to dissolve in this suspended world, replaced only by the steady rhythm of wheels and the unfolding grandeur outside. By midday, the train began its descent, curving gracefully down into gentler terrain. The Alps receded behind you, their peaks fading into the haze, while fertile plains stretched ahead, golden under the midday sun. Villages appeared more frequently now, their markets bustling, their church bells tolling the hour as the train passed Dot in the dining car. A new meal was prepared, a luncheon of fresh salads, hearty soups, and tender roasts, paired with wines from vineyards not far from the very tracks you traveled. The laughter of fellow passengers filled the air, bright and unrestrained, as though the majesty of the morning had lifted every heart. You and Alina dined together once more, your conversation now lighter, punctuated by shared laughter and small silences that felt as comfortable as speech. There was a sense of ease between you, born not of time, but of the strange alchemy of travel, where days stretched long and yet moments felt eternal as the afternoon waned. The train rolled steadily onward, carrying with it the weight of 100 stories, each passenger wrapped in their own tapestry of memory and hope. And as the sun dipped low, casting the world in amber and shadow, you realize that this journey was no longer simply a passage across Europe. It was becoming a story of its own, one written in shared glances, in mountains bathed in dawn light, in the quiet moments when the rhythm of the rails became the rhythm of your heart. The Orient Express pressed on Toward cities waiting with open arms, toward nights yet to be filled with wonder. The train had crossed valleys and plains, leaving behind the majestic silence of the Alps. Now, as afternoon faded into evening, the landscape grew more refined, gentle rivers weaving through cultivated fields, orchards heavy with fruit, villages alive with golden light. It was as if the world itself was preparing a grand entrance, leading you toward one of Europe's cultural jewels. By the time the sky blushed with shades of lavender and indigo, the Orient Express was gliding into Vienna. The city greeted you with elegance from the very first glance-ornate station arches, lamplight reflecting on cobblestones, the faint echo of a violin drifting from somewhere unseen. Even before stepping off, you sensed the city's rhythm, poised, graceful, steeped in centuries of music and art. The train paused long enough to allow passengers to stretch their legs. Some disembarked immediately, eager to explore, while others lingered, content to watch the dance of carriages and automobiles outside the station. You joined the first group, curiosity guiding your steps as you descended to the platform. Vienna, at twilight, was enchanting. Gas lamps cast pools of golden light on the streets, and horse-drawn carriages trotted gracefully beside motor cars. The old and the new weaving together in harmony. Cafes opened their doors wide, releasing the aroma of coffee and sweet pastries into the cool evening air. Musicians played in open courtyards, their notes spilling into the night like liquid silver. You found yourself walking alongside Alina. Though neither of you had spoken of a meeting, it simply felt natural, as though the rhythm of the journey had bound your paths together. She glanced at you, her expression carrying both excitement and a quiet sense of reverence. Vienna is alive with music, she said softly, as if reluctant to disturb the city's delicate symphony. Even the stones here seemed to hum with it. The two of you strolled past opera houses and grand boulevards, where statues stood in silent tribute to composers long gone. A man at the corner sold roses, their petals crimson in the lamplight, while a woman nearby carried a basket of warm bread that filled the air with its comforting scent. Every detail, from the clip-clop of hoofs to the faint tolling of church bells, seemed designed to remind you that this was a city of refinement. And so, soon, you arrived at a cafe tucked on the edge of a square. Its windows glowed invitingly, and the hum of voices within promised warmth and good company. Alina led the way inside, where marble-topped tables gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers, and waiters in white jackets moved with practiced grace. The scent of coffee was rich, deep, intoxicating. You settled at a corner table, where a pianist played softly near the door, filling the room with a melody that seemed to wrap itself around every conversation. A waiter brought cups of Viennese coffee, crowned with whipped cream, along with slices of sachertort, so decadent they glistened under the light. Alina lifted her cup, inhaling deeply before sipping. "This," she murmured, "is the taste of Vienna, bittersweet and unforgettable." The two of you lingered there for some time, watching the world move around you. Couples leaned close, old men debated politics with fiery passion, and students scribbled notes into journals as though trying to capture the soul of the city in words. When at last you stepped back into the square, night had fully fallen, yet Vienna did not sleep, shimmered. The great opera house stood lit like a beacon, its columns bathed in golden light. Carriages continued to move gracefully, their lanterns glowing softly. Somewhere, a violin played a melody so haunting, it seemed to thread itself directly into the fabric of your thoughts. The Orient Express was scheduled to depart soon, and so you made your way back to the station. Yet, the brief hours in Vienna left an indelible impression, like a melody that lingers long after the last note has faded. Back aboard. The train resumed its journey eastward, the city's lights receding into the distance. The dining car was alive with conversation, passengers recounting their evening adventure stales of operas attended, cafes discovered, gardens walked under moonlight. Laughter mingled with the gentle clinking of glasses, creating a chorus all its own. You and Alina shared a quiet dinner together. The dishes inspired by the region, roasted meat with rich gravies, dumplings that melted in your mouth, strudel, fragrant with apple and cinnamon. Each bite carried with it the warmth of the city you had just left, as though Vienna had followed you onto the train. Later, in the observation car, the night pressed close to the windows. The outside world reduced to shadows and starlight. Passengers leaned back in armchairs, their voices soft now, their energy spent. Alina sat beside you, her gaze fixed on the horizon, where the faintest shimmer of moonlight traced the edges of distant hills. "Do you ever feel," she asked quietly, "that travel is less about places and more about what awakens inside of us when we see them?" You considered her words, the truth of them resonating deep within you. Vienna had not simply been a city, it had been a mirror, reflecting the richness of human creativity, the bittersweet beauty of time, the fleeting yet eternal nature of song. The train carried you onward, but a part of your soul remained in that Twilight Square, where music and light had woven together into something timeless. As midnight approached, fatigue settled gently over you like a soft shawl. You rose, bidding Alina good night, with a promise to continue the conversation tomorrow. Back in your cabin, the bed awaited, turned down once more. A chocolate resting on the pillow. You lay down. The rhythm of the rails cradling you. Vienna's music still echoing faintly in your heart. Outside, the stars shimmered, and the train pressed ever eastward. Its passengers cocooned in dreams that would carry them through the night. The journey was far from over. More cities, more landscapes, more stories awaited. But tonight, sleep came easily, wrapped in memories of twilight. In Vienna, the city where every stone sang and every moment felt like a verse in an endless song. The following morning, you awoke to the soft swaying of the train as it glided along the banks of the Danube. Through the window, the great river shimmered beneath the pale light of dawn. Through the heart of Europe, mist rose gently from the water's surface, curling into the air like a secret being carried from one century to the next. The Orient Express seemed to slow as it hugged the curves of the river, affording its passengers long, lingering views of the legendary landscape. Villages nestled along the shore, their church steeples rising gracefully above clusters of red-roofed homes. Fishermen already stood at the banks, their silhouettes calm and steady against the flowing tide. The air outside looked crisp, almost tasting of river, water, and dew. You dressed and made your way toward the dining car, drawn by the familiar comfort of clinking china and the warm aroma of fresh bread. Passengers were quieter than usual this morning, as though the river's grandeur commanded reverence. Soft conversations floated between tables, punctuated by the scrape of cutlery and the low hum of the train. Across the room, Alina was already seated by a window, a journal open before her. Her pen moved steadily across the page, pausing only when she lifted her eyes to take in the river's expanse. When she noticed you, her lips curved into a quiet smile. An invitation for you to join her breakfast was simple, yet elegant. Gaze. Cooked to perfection, baskets of rolls, still warm from the oven. Slices of cheese and cured meats. Honey in little glass jars that glistened like captured sunlight. Coffee arrived, steaming, its aroma rich enough to stir even the sleepiest of travelers. Alina closed her journal and gestured toward the view. The Danube feels eternal, she murmured. It has seen empires rise and fall, yet it just keeps flowing as if history itself is only a shadow passing across its surface. Her words lingered in your mind as you sipped your coffee. Outside, the river continued its silent narration, telling stories older than memory, carrying whispers from faraway mountains to distant seas. Later that day, the train reached Budapest, where the Orient Express would stop long enough for passengers to stretch their legs and explore. As the train slowed across the Great Chain Bridge, the city revealed itself in dazzling fashion. On one side, Buda rose proudly with its castle and hills, while on the other, Pest sprawled wide and vibrant, its boulevards alive with movement. The river divided them, yet also bound them together, like two halves of the same heartbeat. Stepping off the train, you felt the city's energy immediately, brisk, passionate, tinged with something mysterious. The architecture was grand and eclectic, Baroque facades standing beside Art Nouveau curves. Markets spilled onto streets with colorful fabrics, fragrant spices, and vendors calling out their wares. Alina suggested a walk toward the river. And soon you both found yourselves at its edge, gazing across at the Parliament building. Its towers and spires seemed to scrape the sky, reflected in the waters below, like a painting come to life. A violinist stood nearby, playing a melody so haunting that passers-by paused, letting their errands wait just to listen. As you moved deeper into the city, cafes beckoned with their inviting warmth. You entered one tucked in a narrow street, where the walls were lined with books and the scent of paprika stew filled the air. A waiter brought steaming bowls of goulash, rich with spices that seemed to dance across your tongue, and bread still warm from the oven. The cafe buzzed with life students debating at one table, lovers sharing secrets at another, an old man quietly reading his newspaper near the window. It felt as though Budapest had invited you not only into its streets, but into its soul. Afterward, you strolled across the city's boulevards, watching the way light shifted across its rooftops. Bridges arched gracefully over the Danube, each one like a thread weaving the city together. By the time evening fell, lanterns glowed along the riverbanks, and the Parliament shimmered like a palace of fire, its golden lights mirrored in the dark water. Back aboard the Orient Express, passengers were animated, eager to share their impressions of Budapest. Some had visited baths with their steaming mineral pools. Others had attended concerts in ornate halls, and still others had simply wandered, intoxicated by the city's energy. Dinner that night carried flavors of the region: roasted duck with sour cherry sauce, dumplings infused with herbs, sweet pastries dusted with sugar. Conversation flowed easily, and the dining car sparkled with laughter and clinking glasses. Later, in the lounge, the pianist played a piece inspired by Hungarian folk songs, his fingers quick, lively, full of fire. Passengers clapped along softly, some humming, others tapping their feet. The room seemed to pulse with joy. The Danube's spirit carried directly into the heart of the train. When the music faded and passengers drifted toward their cabins, the night settled in. You found yourself once more at the window, watching as the city lights of Budapest faded into the distance, replaced by stars scattered thick across the velvet sky. The Danube remained by your side, its silver surface glowing faintly in the moonlight, like a companion guiding you through the night. Alina appeared beside you, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's something about rivers," she said. "They remind us that life is always moving forward. No matter how beautiful one moment is, we cannot linger there forever. We must flow onward." You turned toward her, and for a brief instant, her expression carried something unspoken, an awareness of the fleeting nature of journeys, of meetings, of all things. Then she smiled softly, and the moment passed, slipping into the current, like a leaf carried downstream. As midnight deepened, you returned to your cabin. The train's rhythm lulled you, steady as a heartbeat, while outside the Danube whispered its endless story. You drifted into sleep, dreams filled with bridges, music, and the shimmering river that would always flow long after your journey had ended. Morning returned with a gentleness you had grown accustomed to on the Orient Express. The train moved steadily eastward, leaving the broad waters of the Danube behind and entering a wilder, more mysterious landscape. Through your cabin's window, rolling hills gave way to rugged slopes, and beyond them, the faint outline of the Carpathian Mountains rose like ancient guardians against the horizon. Mist clung to the valleys, curling upward in pale tendrils that faded into the light of dawn. The forests here were dense and endless, a sea of evergreens, broken only by scattered meadows where small cottages and barns huddled against the chill. Crows drifted lazily overhead, their cries echoing across the still morning air. In the dining car, breakfast carried the earthy simplicity of the region. Dark breads, slices of smoked ham, strong cheese, and cups of black coffee that warmed you against the mountain air. Passengers spoke in hushed tones, as though the landscape demanded quiet reverence. Alina sat opposite you once again, a folded map spread before her dot. She tapped a finger on the paper, tracing the train's route. We're entering Transylvania," she said with a hint of awe. "A place of myths and stories, but also of untamed beauty. These forests have seen more history than any library could hold." The thought settled over you as the train wound its way deeper into the mountains. Villages appeared suddenly from the mist, their wooden homes painted in faded colors, smoke curling from chimneys. Shepherds guided flocks across fields, their movements slow and deliberate, timeless in their simplicity. By midday, the train reached a small station where passengers were invited to disembark for a few hours. The air outside was brisk, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. You followed a narrow path that led from the station into the nearby village. Cobblestone streets twisted between houses with steep roofs, their windows adorned with lace curtains and flower boxes. Children played in the square, their laughter ringing bright against the quiet backdrop of mountains. An elderly woman sold honey and preserves from a wooden stall, jars gleaming like amber in the sun. You purchased one, and she pressed it into your hands with a smile so genuine it seemed to warm the chill around you. Alina lingered at a craftsman's booth nearby, admiring hand-carved wooden icons and intricate woven textiles dyed in deep reds and blues. The village church stood at the edge of the square, its bell tower rising above the rooftops. Its doors were open, and stepping inside, you found an interior glowing with candlelight. Frescoes covered the walls, faded yet still vibrant, telling stories of saints, battles, and miracles. The scent of incense hung in the air, rich and calming. Elena's voice was soft as she stood beside you. It feels like stepping into another century, as if time forgot this place. After the visit, the two of you wandered back toward the station, the train waiting patiently like a loyal companion. Soon, the Orient Express carried you once more into the wilderness, its polished carriages a striking contrast against the rugged terrain. That evening, the dining car embraced the flavors of the region. Venison stew simmered with wild herbs, dumplings filled with soft cheese, and desserts crafted with forest berries. The atmosphere was warm and intimate. Passengers wrapped in the glow of lantern light and the comfort of shared discovery. After dinner, the lounge car became the stage for stories. One passenger, a gentleman with silver hair and a voice made for storytelling, leaned forward and began recounting tales of the Carpathians' legends of hidden monasteries, lost treasures, and shadowy figures who wandered the forests by night. His words wove a spell across the room, holding everyone's attention in rapt silence. Alina listened intently, her eyes reflecting the flicker of the lamp beside her. When the story ended, she leaned closer and whispered, "Myths may not always be real, but they tell us what people once feared or cherished or longed for. And sometimes I think that makes them just as important as truth. As the train pressed deeper into the mountains, the night grew colder. Stars shone fiercely above the jagged peaks, unclouded by city lights. You returned to your cabin, where the rhythm of the train seemed louder in the stillness. Outside your window, moonlight spilled across the forests, casting long shadows that moved with the train. Lying in your berth, you let the darkness carry you. The sounds of the Orient Express, the steady clatter of wheels, the soft creak of wood, the faint hum of steel on steel, combined with the whisper of wind outside. Together, they formed a lullaby of motion and time. Dreams came easily that night. You dreamt of endless forests, of rivers winding through mist, of towers silhouetted against a blood-red sky. And through it all, the train moved forward, unceasing, carrying you into a future wrapped in both mystery and promise. By dawn, the Carpathians began to recede, their peaks fading into the distance as the landscape softened once more into gentle plains. Yet the memory of their twilight remained, etched deeply within you, an enduring reminder of nature's grandeur, of human myth, and of the quiet wonder of a world seen from the window of a train. The final leg of your journey began with a sunrise unlike any other. The Orient Express, still stately and unhurried, rolled across vast plains where the horizon stretched endlessly. The sky was a canvas of soft violets, streaked with gold as the first light broke through the thinning mist. Waiting for the day to unfold, from your cabin window, the scenery had changed again. Gone were the shadowed mountains and dense forests of the Carpathians. Here, the land was broad, open, and golden. Fields of wheat rippled under the wind, dotted with scattered villages whose church steeples glimmered faintly in the rising light. It was a land of wide skies and long roads, and the train seemed to glide across it like a brushstroke across canvas in the dining car. Breakfast was a quieter affair than usual. Passengers lingered over steaming cups of tea and platters of warm bread with honey, each seeming to reflect on the nearing end of the journey. Conversations were softer, smiles tinged with melancholy. It was the stillness of people savoring moments they knew would soon become memories. Alina sat beside you, her journal open, pages filled with sketches and notes from every stop along the way. She paused, tapping the pen against the table. "Isn't it strange?" she mused. "A few days ago, most of us were strangers. And now, as the journey ends, it feels like we're leaving behind more than just landscapes." Her words rang true. The Orient Express had become more than a train. It was a moving world of its own, a fleeting community bound by shared discovery. Each meal, each conversation, Each view from the window had woven you into the tapestry of this remarkable voyage by mid-morning. The train slowed as it passed through a larger town. Markets bustled along the station platforms, vendors selling baskets of fruit, roasted nuts, and fragrant spices. From your window, you caught glimpses of daily life. Children in uniforms hurrying to school. Shopkeepers sweeping their thresholds. A cart piled high with fresh bread rolling down a cobbled street. The world outside was ordinary, and yet, from the vantage of the Orient Express, it seemed extraordinary. That afternoon, the lounge car filled with gentle music from the polished piano. A passenger played a wistful melody, and others gathered quietly, listening. The air was warm with nostalgia, and for a moment you felt suspended between two worlds, the timelessness of the train and the reality waiting beyond its journey. Alina leaned close, her voice low. Do you think we'll ever feel something like this again? This sense of being outside time. You looked around the lounge, the gilded lamps, the velvet chairs, the faces illuminated by both memory and expectation. You weren't sure. The Orient Express carried an enchantment that could never quite be repeated. Only remembered. Dinner on the final evening was the grandest of all. Alec. Crystal glasses sparkled in the lamplight, and the menu was a celebration of the journey's diverse flavors. Delicate fish from the rivers of the East, tender lamb slow-cooked with herbs, pastries layered with cream and fruit. The waiters moved gracefully, as though aware that this was more than a meal, it was a farewell. Passengers raised their glasses in toasts, voices carrying notes of gratitude, wistfulness, and joy. Stories were shared, laughter rose and fell, and through it all, the steady rhythm of the train continued beneath, carrying everyone toward the inevitable conclusion. Later, as the train pushed through the night, you found yourself unable to sleep. You walked softly through the corridors, past doors closed on quiet cabins. At last, you returned to the observation platform at the rear of the train. There, the world opened before you. Sea of stars above, fields rushing past in silver shadow, the rails gleaming like twin rivers of moonlight stretching endlessly behind. Alina joined you, wrapped in a shawl against the night air. She stood silently beside you for a long time, her gaze fixed on the vanishing track. Finally, she spoke. Every journey changes us, doesn't it? Not in ways we always see at once, but in ways that stay. Her words echoed in your heart. You realized then that the Orient Express was not just a passage across geography, but across inner landscapes, as well an exploration of memory, wonder, and the timeless rhythm of travel. As dawn approached, the train slowed once more. The outlines of a great city appeared against the morning light, domes and towers emerging from the mist. The final destination, the end of the line, the Orient Express eased into the station, steam hissing, brakes sighing, as though even the train itself regretted the journey's conclusion. Passengers gathered their belongings slowly, reluctant to step back into the world beyond. Porters bustled along the platform, calling to one another, while pigeons wheeled overhead in the growing light. You stood on the platform at last, the grand carriages looming above you, polished brass gleaming one final time. Alina closed her journal, slipping it into her bag. She smiled, though her eyes carried the same wistfulness you felt. "Goodbye, my friend," she said softly. "Perhaps we'll meet again on another journey. Or perhaps the Orient Express will remain our shared secret." The whistle blew, and, with a final surge of steam, the train began to move again, rolling forward into its next story. You stood watching until it vanished from sight, leaving only the echo of wheels and the faint scent of coal and iron in the air. Yet, within you, the journey lived on. Every landscape, every meal, every whispered conversation had etched itself into memory. And you understood then that while the Orient Express carried passengers across countries, its greater gift was carrying them into moments of wonder. Moments that linger long after the rail's end, as you stepped into the awakening city, the first rays of the sun spilling across the rooftops. You carried that gift with you. A piece of the Orient Express traveled still in your heart, a reminder that life itself is a journey, and that beauty is found not only in destinations, but in the rhythm of the road between. The story of the Orient Express had ended, but your story, woven now with echoes of midnight forests, golden plains, and moonlit rails, was only beginning.
Thank you.